The horizon's dusty pink glow caught the gleam of tears on Sophia Grayson's cheeks as she limped toward the town limits, her feet already bloodied from the sharp pebbles of Redemption Creek's main street. Behind her, the saloon's piano music faded with each painful step she took, her heart pounding harder than the keys ever could. The letter crumpled in her fist was her only possession now. Everything else had been taken, along with her dignity. Redemption Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1878. A town that had promised her salvation after fleeing Chicago's suffocating confines had become just another prison. 3 months of working for Harold Blackwater at his general store had earned her nothing but his unwanted advances, culminating in his final ultimatum delivered that morning: share his bed or find herself without work, without lodging, and without a reference. She chose neither. Instead, she chose the open road. "Miss Grayson," a deep voice called from behind. Sophia stiffened, refusing to turn. She knew that voice. It belonged to Preston Elwood, the quiet rancher who came to town once a week for supplies. He'd always tipped his hat to her, sometimes lingering at the counter while she wrapped his purchases in brown paper, but they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries. "Miss Grayson, you're bleeding," he said, closer now. Sophia whirled around, her green eyes flashing. "Mr. Elwood, I thank you for your concern, but I am leaving this God-forsaken place, and nothing will stop me." Preston Elwood stood 6 feet tall with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. At 32, he'd seen enough of the world to recognize desperation when it faced him. His gaze dropped to her bare, bloodied feet, then back to her tear-stained face. "Where are your shoes, Miss Grayson?" he asked softly. "Mr. Blackwater owns them," she replied bitterly. "Along with everything else I thought was mine," understanding dawned in Preston's eyes. He'd heard whispers about Blackwater's treatment of his female employees, but he hadn't realized it had come to this. He glanced back at the town, then to the vast, unforgiving landscape that lay beyond. "You'll not make 5 miles barefoot," he said, matter-of-factly. "The terrain will cut you to ribbons." Sophia lifted her chin. "Then I shall crawl the 6th. A ghost of a smile touched Preston's lips. "That's a mighty difficult way to travel." He removed his hat, running a hand through his sandy brown hair. "Miss Grayson, if you're determined to leave town barefoot, then I'll walk with you." Sophia blinked in confusion. "I beg your pardon, my ranch is 15 miles east. You're welcome to rest there, figure out your next move." He gestured to his horse. "Samson here can carry your weight." "I don't mind walking." "Why would you help me?" Suspicion laced her voice. "You hardly know me." "I know enough," Preston replied. "I know Blackwater is a snake. I know no one deserves to flee without even shoes on their feet. And I know my ma would tan my hide, even from the grave, if I let a woman walk into that wilderness alone." Sophia hesitated, studying his face for any sign of deception. Finding none, she still shook her head. "I have nothing to offer in return. Not asking for anything," Preston said simply. "Just offering safe passage and a roof." A gust of wind blew dust across the road, and Sophia shivered in her thin cotton dress. The sun would set in a few hours, and the night would bring cold that could kill as surely as any predator. "Your ranch," she said cautiously. "Do you live alone?" Preston nodded. "Just me and my foreman, old Samuel. He's got a cabin of his own on the property." He paused. "There's a spare room in the main house. It was my sister's before she married and moved to Denver." Sophia weighed her limited options. Death in the wilderness seemed certain without supplies or proper footwear. A return to town was unthinkable. "One night," she finally conceded. "I'll accept your help for one night, Mr. Elwood, then I'll be on my way." Relief washed over Preston's features. "That's fair." He extended his hand toward Samson. "Let me help you up." When his calloused fingers wrapped around hers, Sophia felt an unexpected warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. He boosted her onto the saddle with effortless strength, then gathered the reins and began leading the horse eastward. "What's in Chicago?" Preston asked after they'd put some distance between themselves and Redemption Creek. Sophia startled. "How did you know I'm from Chicago? Your accent." "It's faint, but it's there. Plus, you mentioned it to Mrs. Miller when she was buying fabric last month." He shrugged. "I notice things." "Nothing," Sophia answered after a moment. "There's nothing in Chicago for me now. My parents died of influenza 2 years ago. I taught at a girls' school until—" She trailed off, Preston didn't press. My condolences about your parents. They fell into silence as they traveled, the rhythmic clip-clop of Samson's hooves marking time. Sophia studied Preston's broad shoulders as he walked ahead. His gait was steady and sure, a man accustomed to covering long distances on foot. You didn't have to give up your horse, she said eventually. Samson's carried heavier loads than you, Preston replied without looking back, and I've walked farther distances. The sun dipped lower, painting the vast Wyoming landscape in gold. Despite her circumstances, Sophia found herself captivated by the beauty surrounding them, rolling hills dotted with sagebrush, distant mountains purple against the sky, and the endless expanse that seemed to promise freedom. It's beautiful out here, she murmured. Preston glanced back at her, a genuine smile warming his features. That it is. Most folks just see emptiness. They don't look close enough. What do you see, Mr. Elwood? Possibility, he answered without hesitation. Land that can sustain life if you respect it. Skies that tell you everything you need to know about tomorrow's weather. Space to breathe. His words resonated with something deep within Sophia. She'd come west seeking exactly that possibility. A chance to breathe freely after the suffocating grief of losing her parents and the subsequent unpleasantness that had driven her from Chicago. As they approached a shallow creek, Preston helped her dismount so Samson could drink. Sophia winced when her feet touched the ground. Let me see, Preston said, kneeling before she could protest. He examined her feet with gentle hands. We need to clean these cuts. He guided her to a flat rock by the creek's edge and dampened his handkerchief in the cool water. With unexpected tenderness, he cleaned the dirt and blood from her feet. Why did you really leave Chicago, Miss Grayson? He asked quietly, eyes focused on his task. Sophia stiffened. That's rather forward of you, Mr. Elwood. We're a long way from polite society, he replied, glancing up. And I figure a woman running barefoot from one bad situation might have run from another before. She remained silent long enough that Preston thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she sighed. I was engaged to be married, the headmaster's son, her voice caught. He wasn't who I thought he was. When I broke the engagement, he ensured I lost my position at the school, then he spread rumors that made finding another teaching position impossible. So you came west. So I came west, she echoed, where no one knew my name or the lies told about me. Preston finished cleaning her feet and sat beside her on the rock. People out here care less about your past than what you can contribute now. Is that why you helped me? To see what I can contribute, his eyes met her steadily. I helped you because it was the right thing to do. Nothing more complicated than that. Something in his direct gaze made Sophia believe him, and that was perhaps more frightening than distrust. Trust had become a luxury she could ill afford. They continued their journey as the sun dipped below the horizon. True darkness fell quickly on the plains, but a full moon provided enough light to follow the trail. When Sophia began to nod off in the saddle, Preston gently woke her. We're almost there, he said. See those lights. In the distance, warm yellow squares punctuated the darkness windows of a substantial ranch house. As they drew closer, Sophia could make out a main building flanked by a barn and several smaller structures. A dog began to bark, announcing their arrival. That's just Ranger, Preston explained. He sounds fiercer than he is. True to his word, the large brown dog that bounded toward them quickly abandoned his threatening posture when he recognized Preston, wagging his tail enthusiastically. The front door opened, spilling more light onto the yard. An older man with a shock of white hair stepped out, rifle in hand. That you, Preston? He called. It's me, Samuel. We have a guest. Samuel lowered his rifle, squinting in the darkness. Didn't expect company this time of night. Preston helped Sophia dismount, supporting her weight as her sore feet touched the ground. This is Miss Sophia Grayson. She'll be staying with us tonight. Samuel's eyebrows rose, but he merely nodded. I'll put on some coffee. The inside of Preston's home surprised Sophia. Rather than the sparse bachelor quarters she had expected, she found a well-appointed living area with solid furniture, colorful woven rugs, and bookshelves lined with volumes. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, warding off the night's chill. It's lovely, she said, genuinely impressed. Preston looked pleased. My mother had a good eye for making a home. I've tried to keep it up since she passed. Samuel appeared with a tray bearing coffee and some cold supper. His weathered face regarded Sophia with undisguised curiosity. "Miss Grayson is from Redemption Creek," Preston explained, taking the tray. She needed to leave town rather suddenly, understanding dawned on Samuel's face. "Blackwater," he said grimly. Sophia looked up sharply. "You know of him?" "Everyone within 50 miles knows Harold Blackwater," Samuel replied. "Man's got a reputation that stinks worse than a skunk." "Samuel was kind enough to warn me against doing business with him," Preston added, "but sometimes he's the only merchant who carries what we need." "Not anymore," Samuel declared. "Been telling Preston to ride the extra 10 miles to Jenkins' trading post instead. Decent man, fair prices." While they spoke, Preston had been examining Sophia's feet again. "These need proper tending," he said. "Samuel, would you fetch my mother's medical kit? And perhaps some of Rebecca's old things might fit Miss Grayson." After Samuel departed, Sophia found her voice. "This is too much kindness, Mr. Elwood. I don't deserve such treatment from strangers." Preston's eyes met hers. "Everyone deserves kindness, Miss Grayson, especially those who have seen too little of it." Samuel returned with a wooden box and a bundle of clothing. "Rebecca left these when she moved. Might be a bit large, but they'll do until we can get you proper things." Sophia accepted the items with trembling hands. "I don't know how to thank you both." "No need," Samuel said gruffly. "I'll head back to my cabin now. Morning comes early on a ranch." He nodded to Preston. "See you at sunup." After Samuel left, Preston opened the medical kit. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her feet. Sophia hesitated only briefly before nodding. She watched as he cleaned her cuts more thoroughly, applied a pungent salve, and wrapped her feet in clean bandages. "Where did you learn to do this?" she asked. "War teaches a man many things," Preston replied quietly. "I served with the Union." 18th Illinois Infantry. Sophia studied his face, realizing he would have been barely more than a boy during the conflict that had torn the nation apart. "You've seen much suffering." "And much healing," he countered. "That's what I prefer to remember." When he finished, he showed her to Rebecca's old room. Clean linens covered the bed, and a small vase of wildflowers sat on the dresser. "Samuel must have prepared this while we were talking," Preston explained, looking slightly embarrassed. "He's always had a soft spot for those in need." "It's perfect," Sophia assured him. "Thank you, Mr. Elwood." "Preston," he corrected gently. "Out here formality seems unnecessary." "Preston," she repeated. "Then I'm Sophia," he nodded, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Good night, Sophia, rest well." Alone in the room, Sophia changed into the borrowed nightgown and slipped between the cool sheets. Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded her as she considered her situation. She had fled one man's unwanted advances only to place herself at the mercy of another. Yet something told her Preston Elwood was different. His kindness seemed genuine, his motives pure. Still, she couldn't stay. One night she had promised. One night to rest before continuing her journey to where she had no destination in mind, only the desperate need to escape. As sleep finally claimed her, Sophia's last thought was of Preston's gentle hands tending her wounded feet, and the curious warmth that had spread through her at his touch. Morning arrived with the rich aroma of coffee and the sizzle of bacon. Sophia dressed in Rebecca's clothes, a simple blue dress that hung loosely on her smaller frame, but felt wonderfully clean after yesterday's ordeal. She tied her dark hair back with a ribbon she found in the dresser drawer and made her way to the kitchen. Preston stood at the stove, his back to her. Without his hat, his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck. He wore a clean shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle from years of ranch work. "Good morning," Sophia said softly. He turned, spatula in hand, and his smile was like sunrise. "You're up. How are your feet feeling?" "Better, thank you." She glanced around. "Where's Samuel?" "Already out checking the herd. Man rises before the roosters." Preston gestured to the table. "Hungry?" Sophia nodded, suddenly aware of how little she'd eaten the previous day. Preston served up eggs, bacon, and biscuits with a proficiency that spoke of long practice. "You cook well," she observed, savoring the first bite. "Necessity," he replied with a shrug. "Can't expect Samuel to handle everything." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Sophia broached the subject foremost on her mind. "I should leave today. Perhaps you could direct me to the nearest town with a stage-coach line." Preston set down his fork. "Your feet need at least another day of rest. And the next coach doesn't come through Willow Springs until Friday." Today is Tuesday, Sophia calculated. That's 3 days away. It is, Preston agreed. You're welcome to stay until then or longer if you need. Sophia stared at him. Why would you make such an offer? You know nothing about me. I know you're intelligent. I've seen the way you handle the ledger at Blackwater's store. I know you're brave, walking out with nothing rather than compromising yourself. I know you appreciate beauty. He gestured toward the window where the morning light illuminated the rolling landscape. Those seem like good qualities in a person. His simple assessment left Sophia momentarily speechless. Finally, she managed, still, I cannot impose. It's no imposition. Truth is, we could use the help. He leaned back in his chair. Spring roundup's coming. Samuel and I will be busy from dawn till dusk. Someone to keep things running here at the house would be a blessing. Sophia narrowed her eyes. Are you offering me employment, Mr. Elwood? Preston, he reminded her. And yes, I suppose I am. Room, board, and fair wages for however long you wish to stay. When you're ready to move on, I'll personally ensure you reach your destination safely. The offer was tempting, far more generous than anything she could have hoped for. Yet suspicion lingered. Most men don't hire unmarried women to live on their property, she pointed out. People would talk. Preston's expression remained calm. People already talk about the Union soldier who employs a former slave as his equal partner. One more reason for gossip won't matter much. This revelation about Samuel surprised her, though it explained the easy camaraderie between the men. You and Samuel are partners, Preston nodded. Built this place together after the war. Samuel had the knowledge. He grew up on a cattle ranch in Kentucky. I had some inheritance from my father. Seemed like a good match. Sophia considered his offer. 3 days until the stagecoach. 3 days to rest, heal, and formulate a plan, perhaps even earn a little money to fund her journey. Very well, she said finally. I accept your offer of employment until Friday. After that, we can discuss whether it's best for me to continue on. Relief crossed Preston's features. Good, that's good. He stood, clearing their plates. Your feet should heal faster if you stay off them today. Perhaps you'd like some books. My mother was quite the reader. Sophia's eyes brightened. I would love that. Preston showed her to a small study where bookshelves lined the walls. Volumes of poetry, history, science, and fiction filled the space, a surprising collection for a frontier ranch. My father was a schoolteacher before he came west, Preston explained, seeing her surprise. Books were as necessary as food to my parents. Sophia ran her fingers along the spines reverently. This is wonderful. Take whatever interests you. They've been read many times already. She selected a volume of Whitman and a novel by Dickens. These will keep me occupied today. Tomorrow I insist on earning my keep. Preston smiled. We'll see how your feet are healing first. The day passed pleasantly for Sophia as she read by the window, occasionally glancing out to watch Preston and Samuel working with the horses in a corral near the barn. Their movements were efficient and practiced, communicating more through gestures than words. Several times she caught Preston looking toward the house, and once he tipped his hat when their eyes met. By evening, Sophia had finished Great Expectations and started on Whitman's poems. When Preston returned, dusty and tired but satisfied with the day's work, he found her deeply engrossed. I am large, I contain multitudes, he quoted as he entered the room. Sophia looked up, pleasantly surprised. You know Whitman, my mother's favorite. Preston set his hat on a hook by the door. She used to read aloud in the evenings, said poetry made more sense under the stars. Something in his tone made Sophia wish she had known this woman who had raised such a thoughtful son. She sounds wonderful. She was. He smiled, but there was sadness in it. Dinner in an hour, Samuel's bringing fresh trout. True to his word, Samuel arrived with 6 gleaming fish. To Sophia's delight, dinner became an impromptu cooking lesson as the men showed her how to prepare the trout with herbs from Preston's mother's garden, which Samuel still maintained. Mrs. Elwood always said food tastes better when hands work together to make it, Samuel explained as he taught Sophia how to remove the bones. The meal was delicious, and conversation flowed easily. Samuel, once past his initial reserve, proved to be a gifted storyteller, regaling Sophia with tales of the ranch's early days. This land wasn't much when we found it, he recalled. Overgrazed by the previous owner, water sources neglected. Preston here insisted we could bring it back if we worked with the land instead of against it. Samuel's being modest, Preston interjected. His knowledge of cattle and rangeland management is what saved this place. I just provided the labor. Their obvious respect for each other touched Sophia deeply. Here were two men who had found a way past society's expectations to forge a true partnership. As the evening wound down, Sophia found herself reluctant to retire. The warmth of the kitchen, the easy companionship, the sense of belonging, all were balms to her wounded spirit. "Thank you both for a lovely evening," she said finally, rising from her chair. Samuel nodded respectfully. "Good night, Miss Grayson." "Sophia, please," she corrected gently. "Sophia," he repeated with a small smile. "Rest well." Preston walked her to her room, carrying a lamp to light their way through the darkened hallway. At her door, he hesitated. "Tomorrow, if your feet are better, perhaps you'd like to see more of the ranch. It's not much, but it's home." "I'd like that very much," Sophia replied, surprised by how much she meant it. His smile in the lamplight made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "Good night, then." "Good night, Preston." Sleep came easier that night, wrapped in the security of this unexpected haven. For the first time since leaving Chicago, Sophia felt the knot of tension in her chest begin to loosen. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Sophia rose early, determined to contribute to the household. She found Preston in the kitchen preparing coffee. "Your feet?" he asked immediately. Sophia took a few experimental steps. "Much better, still tender, but I can walk." "Good," he nodded approvingly. "Samuel left fresh eggs in the basket. Think you can manage breakfast while I finish the morning chores?" "Of course." The domestic task felt surprisingly welcome after months of standing behind Blackwater's counter. By the time Preston returned, Sophia had prepared a hearty breakfast and set the table. She'd even found a jar of preserves in the pantry to accompany the biscuits. "This looks amazing," Preston said appreciatively. "You didn't have to go to such trouble." "It's no trouble," Sophia assured him. "It feels good to be useful." After breakfast, true to his word, Preston showed her around the ranch. Despite her still tender feet, Sophia insisted on walking, eager to see everything. The Elwood Samuel Ranch, as Preston referred to it, comprised 300 acres of grazing land, a small apple orchard, and hayfields that would be planted once spring fully arrived. "It's smaller than some operations," Preston explained as they walked toward a ridge overlooking the property, "but we focus on quality over quantity. Our cattle fetch better prices because we raise them right." "It's beautiful," Sophia said sincerely. The landscape rolled away in gentle waves, dotted with cattle and framed by distant mountains. A creek meandered through the property, lined with cottonwoods just beginning to leaf out. "My father homesteaded this land before the war," Preston continued. "After he died, my mother kept it going with hired help until I returned from fighting. Samuel came with me, we served together." He paused, looking out over the vista. "She welcomed him like another son. She sounds like a remarkable woman." She was. "Taught me that character matters more than circumstance." He glanced at Sophia. "She would have liked you." The simple statement warmed Sophia more than it should have. "How did she pass influenza? Winter of '73, his voice grew quiet. "Same winter my younger brother died." "I'm so sorry," Sophia said, instinctively reaching for his hand. Her fingers clasped his briefly before she realized what she'd done and pulled away, embarrassed. Preston didn't comment on the gesture, but his eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Rebecca moved to Denver the following spring. Couldn't bear the memories, I suppose. Can't blame her. But you stayed. This land was everything to my parents. Leaving would have felt like abandoning them somehow," he shrugged. "Besides, Samuel and I had nowhere else to go." They continued walking, crossing a small footbridge over the creek. On the other side, a clearing held a small family cemetery surrounded by a wrought iron fence. "May I?" Sophia asked. Preston nodded, opening the gate for her. 4 graves occupied the peaceful space, each marked with a simple stone. Thomas Elwood, 1811–1868. Margaret Elwood, 1820–1873. James Elwood, 1853–1873. And a smaller stone marked simply Baby Elwood, 1855. "Your mother lost a child," Sophia said softly, "between Rebecca and James. She never spoke of it much, but she visited this grave every Sunday without fail." Preston's voice held a deep respect. "She understood grief but never let it consume her. Sophia thought of her own parents, buried in a crowded Chicago cemetery. She hadn't been able to afford proper headstones, just simple markers. The guilt of that still stung. "I couldn't give my parents decent graves," she admitted. "Everything went to medical bills and funeral costs." Preston's hand found hers this time, his grip warm and steady. "It's not the stone that matters, it's the remembering." They stood in silence for a moment, hands joined in shared understanding of loss. Finally, Preston gently tugged her away. "Come, there's something else I want to show you." He led her through a grove of trees to another clearing where a small cabin stood. Unlike the main house, this structure was new, its logs still golden with fresh cut timber. "What's this?" Sophia asked. "My project," Preston replied. "Started building it last summer. Thought Rebecca might want her own place when she visits, but she's made it clear Denver's home now." He opened the door, revealing a simple but charming interior. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flanked by windows that looked out over the valley. The single room contained a bed frame, a table with 2 chairs, and a small cooking area. "It's lovely," Sophia said, admiring the craftsmanship. "You built this yourself?" Samuel helped with the chimney, but yes. Preston ran a hand along the smooth wooden mantel. "Keeps my hands busy during winter evenings." Sophia moved to the window, taking in the view. "The light is perfect here. That's why I chose this spot." Preston joined her at the window. "Morning sun, afternoon shade, and you can see all the way to the eastern pasture." Standing beside him, Sophia became acutely aware of his nearness, of the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. For a breathless moment, she imagined what it might be like to wake up in this cabin every morning to such a view, with Preston beside her. The thought startled her with its clarity and longing. She stepped away abruptly. "We should head back. I promised Samuel I'd help prepare dinner." If Preston noticed her sudden discomfort, he didn't show it. "Of course, it's getting late." The walk back to the main house was quieter, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the porch, Preston stopped her with a gentle touch on her arm. "Sophia," he said, his voice serious, "I want you to know that my offer stands. You have a place here for as long as you want it. No obligations, no expectations, just honest work and fair treatment." The sincerity in his storm gray eyes made her throat tighten. "Thank you," she managed, "but I still plan to leave Friday. It's better that way." Something like disappointment flickered across his features, but he nodded. "As you wish." That evening, Sophia helped Samuel prepare a venison stew from meat he had preserved during the winter hunt. The older man proved to be a patient teacher, showing her how to blend herbs and spices to enhance the rich flavor of the meat. "You've got a good touch with cooking," Samuel observed as she stirred the pot. "Reminds me of my mother. She could make a feast from scraps when times were lean." "My mother taught me," Sophia replied, enjoying the simple task. "She said cooking was both science and art." Wise woman. Samuel checked the cornbread baking in the cast iron stove. "Preston mentioned you're planning to leave Friday," Sophia nodded, focusing on the stew. "The stagecoach comes through Willow Springs then. Mind if I ask where you're headed?" She stirred the pot thoughtfully. "West, I suppose." "Oregon or California, somewhere I can start fresh." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "Starting fresh is good, running scared is different." Sophia looked up sharply. "I'm not running scared." "No." His kind eyes held no judgment, only understanding. "Seems to me you're fleeing one bad situation without giving thought to where you're going. That's not starting fresh, that's just running." His words struck uncomfortably close to the truth. "What would you have me do? Stay here indefinitely, dependent on your kindness?" "You wouldn't be dependent, you'd be earning your way." Samuel checked the cornbread again. "And this ranch could use a woman's touch. Preston won't say it, but he gets lonely out here. Man was meant to have family around him." Heat rushed to Sophia's cheeks. "Mr. Samuel, if you're suggesting, I'm not suggesting anything improper," he interrupted gently. "Just pointing out that good situations are rare in this life. Walking away from one without good reason seems foolish." Before Sophia could respond, Preston entered, stamping dust from his boots. The conversation shifted to dinner preparations, but Samuel's words lingered in her mind. That night, alone in her room, Sophia confronted the real reason for her determination to leave. It wasn't fear of imposing or even uncertainty about her future. It was fear of the feelings growing within her feelings for a man she had known less than 3 days. After her disastrous engagement in Chicago and Blackwater's unwanted attentions, she had promised herself she would never again be vulnerable to a man's power. Yet Preston Elwood was unlike any man she had ever known. His kindness came with no apparent strings, his respect was genuine, and his presence made her feel both safe and alive in ways she couldn't explain. Still, 3 days was not enough time to trust such feelings. Leaving was the sensible choice. She would thank the men for their kindness, pay for her stage coach ticket with the wages Preston had promised, and continue west as planned. Decision made, Sophia finally drifted to sleep, ignoring the hollow feeling in her chest at the thought of leaving the ranch and Preston behind. Thursday dawned with unexpected activity. Sophia woke to the sound of horses and men's voices in the yard. From her window, she saw Preston and Samuel talking with 3 riders, their expressions serious. She dressed quickly and made her way to the kitchen, where she found fresh coffee but no breakfast preparations. Curious, she stepped onto the porch just as Preston was seeing the riders off. "What's happening?" she asked as he turned back toward the house. His face was grim. "Cattle rustlers hit the Jenkins place last night, took nearly half their herd and shot 2 ranch hands who tried to stop them," Sophia gasped. "Are the men?" "One's dead. Others hanging on, but it doesn't look good." Preston ran a hand through his hair. "Sheriff's forming a posse. Samuel and I need to join them." "Of course," Sophia nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. In cattle country, rustling wasn't just theft, it was an attack on a rancher's very livelihood. Preston hesitated, concern evident in his eyes. "We may be gone overnight. Will you be all right here alone?" "I'll be fine," she assured him. "Ranger will keep me company." The dog, hearing his name, thumped his tail against the porch boards. "There's a rifle in my study, loaded. Do you know how to use one?" "My father taught me," Sophia confirmed. Growing up, her father had believed all his children's sons and daughters alike should know basic self-defense. Relief crossed Preston's features. "Good, we'll try to be back by tomorrow, but if we're not..." He trailed off, then pulled something from his pocket. "Here, this should cover your stage ticket and some extra for your journey in case we're delayed." He pressed bills into her hand, far more than she expected for 2 days of light housekeeping. "This is too much," she protested. "It's fair," Preston insisted. "And it's yours, regardless of whether you stay or go." Before she could respond, Samuel appeared from the barn, leading 2 saddled horses. "Time to ride, Preston. Sheriff wants to catch up to them before they cross the territorial line." Preston nodded, then turned back to Sophia. His eyes held hers for a long moment, as though memorizing her face. "Be safe," he said finally. "You too," she whispered. She watched as the 2 men mounted and rode away, Ranger barking a farewell from the porch. The ranch seemed suddenly larger and emptier without their presence. Determined to keep busy, Sophia threw herself into household tasks. She baked bread, swept floors, and washed linens, finding comfort in the domestic routine. By late afternoon, she had cleaned the entire house and prepared a stew that could be easily reheated when the men returned. As dusk fell, she sat on the porch with Ranger at her feet, watching the trail for any sign of riders. None appeared. Eventually, she retired to her room, leaving a lamp burning in the window as a beacon. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by every creak of the settling house and howl of distant coyotes. Near dawn, Sophia gave up and rose to make coffee. She had just stoked the kitchen fire when Ranger's alert bark brought her to the window. A single rider approached slowly, his horse clearly exhausted. Even from a distance, Sophia recognized Samuel's distinctive white hair. Her heart stuttered. Where was Preston? She hurried outside as Samuel dismounted stiffly. His face was haggard with fatigue, and a blood-stained bandage wrapped his left arm. "Samuel, you're hurt," she exclaimed. "Where's Preston?" "He's coming," Samuel assured her, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Stayed behind to help bring in the stolen cattle." Sheriff caught the rustlers crossing Johnson Creek. Relief flooded Sophia, followed immediately by concern for Samuel's injury. "Come inside, let me look at that arm." Despite his protests that it was just a scratch, Samuel allowed Sophia to clean and rebandage the wound, a deep graze from a rustler's bullet that had thankfully missed bone and major vessels. "You were lucky," she observed, tying off the fresh bandage. "Wasn't luck," Samuel replied solemnly. Preston pushed my arm away just as the man fired, would have caught me square in the chest otherwise. Sophia's hands stilled. He saved your life. Not the first time, Samuel said with a tired smile. Won't be the last, I expect. After ensuring Samuel ate something, Sophia sent him to rest. She then turned to caring for his exhausted horse, recalling the basic grooming skills Preston had shown her during their tour of the ranch. By midday, there was still no sign of Preston. Sophia found herself checking the trail repeatedly, anxiety growing with each passing hour. Samuel had said Preston was safe, but what if something had happened after they separated? Late in the afternoon, as Sophia was gathering eggs from the henhouse, Ranger's excited barking alerted her. She rushed to the front of the house in time to see Preston riding slowly up the trail, leading a second horse. Without thought, Sophia ran to meet him, heedless of the distance or her still healing feet. Preston dismounted just as she reached him, his face breaking into a weary smile. "You're here," she breathed, stopping just short of throwing her arms around him. "Samuel said you were all right, but I was worried when you didn't return with him. Sheriff needed help with the recovered cattle," Preston explained, his voice hoarse with fatigue. His clothes were dust-covered and a day's stubble darkened his jaw. "Are you and Samuel okay? He's resting. His arm will heal fine." She reached for the reins of his horse. "Come inside, you look dead on your feet." Preston didn't argue, following her to the house where she insisted he sit while she prepared a hot meal and bath. As she worked, he recounted the pursuit of the rustlers, a gang of 4 men who had been terrorizing ranches across the territory. "We caught them at Johnson Creek. There was a firefight. That's when Samuel was hit." Preston's eyes darkened at the memory. 2 of the rustlers were killed, sheriffs taking the others back to stand trial. And the stolen cattle, most recovered, being driven back to Jenkins' place now. Preston rubbed his eyes wearily. Jenkins lost his foreman, though. Good man, left a wife and 3 children. The human cost of frontier justice hung heavy in the air between them. Sophia placed a bowl of stew before Preston, her hand briefly touching his shoulder in silent comfort. "Eat," she urged gently. "Then rest. Everything else can wait." After Preston had eaten and bathed, Sophia insisted he sleep. Though he protested that there were chores to be done, his exhaustion was evident in every line of his body. When he finally acquiesced, Sophia felt a surge of protective tenderness that surprised her with its intensity. Samuel emerged from his cabin in the early evening, his arm in a sling, but his spirits improved after rest. Together, he and Sophia managed the essential ranch chores, working in companionable silence as twilight settled over the land. "You're good for him," Samuel said abruptly as they closed the barn for the night. Sophia glanced at the older man. "I barely know him." "Sometimes that doesn't matter." Samuel's wise eyes held hers. "Some people just fit together like they were meant to find each other." "Samuel, I know, you're leaving tomorrow," he sighed. "Just seems a shame is all. Man like Preston doesn't open his heart easily, but he opened it to you right quick." His words followed Sophia back to the house, where she checked on Preston before retiring. He slept deeply, one arm flung across the bed, his face relaxed in repose. Standing in the doorway, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, Sophia felt something shift within her, a recognition of truth she could no longer deny. In just 4 days, Preston Elwood had become important to her in ways she couldn't fully understand. The thought of leaving him behind created an ache that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with deeper feelings. But was it enough to change her plans? To risk staying? Samuel had called her a runner, and perhaps he was right. She had been fleeing from one situation to the next, never stopping long enough to build something lasting. Sleep eluded her that night as she wrestled with her decision. By dawn, she had packed her few belongings and written a letter of thanks to both men, placing it on the kitchen table alongside the money Preston had given her. She would walk to Willow Springs, taking nothing she hadn't earned. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when Sophia slipped from the house. Her feet, though improved, protested as she started down the trail that would eventually lead to town. Behind her, Ranger whined from the porch, confused by her departure but trained to stay with the house. She had gone perhaps half a mile when she heard hoofbeats approaching rapidly from behind. Turning, she saw Preston galloping toward her, his face set in lines of determination. He pulled his horse to a stop beside her, dismounting in one fluid motion. You weren't even going to say goodbye. He demanded, his voice rough with emotion. Sophia clutched her small bundle tighter. I left a letter. I thought it would be easier. Easier for whom? Preston's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. Not for me, and I don't think for you either. Preston, please. The stagecoach won't arrive until afternoon, he cut her off. Samuel rode into town yesterday while I was sleeping. He checked the schedule. Caught in her half-truth, Sophia looked away. I need to go. Why? Preston stepped closer. Give me one good reason why you need to leave. Because I'm afraid, the words burst from her before she could stop them. I'm afraid of staying in one place, afraid of depending on someone else, afraid of feeling the way I'm beginning to feel about you. Her admission hung in the air between them. Preston's expression softened. And how is that? He asked quietly. How do you feel about me, Sophia? She met his gaze, finding courage in the warmth she saw there. Like I could belong here with you, and that terrifies me because I've been wrong before, catastrophically wrong. Preston nodded, understanding in his eyes. I won't pretend to know what happened in Chicago beyond what you've told me, but I do know this running won't heal those wounds. It just postpones the healing. And staying will, she challenged. Maybe, if you stay for the right reasons. He took another step toward her, close enough now that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I'm not asking you to decide forever, Sophia, just to give us a chance to grow naturally, stay another week or month. Work on the ranch if that makes you feel more independent. Get to know me better. And if it doesn't work out, if I still want to leave, then I'll personally drive you to the stagecoach and wish you well. His voice was steady, sincere. No recriminations, no regrets. Sophia studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. She found only honest emotion and patient hope. You'd let me go just like that? She asked softly. It would break my heart, Preston admitted. But yes, because caring for someone means wanting their happiness even if it doesn't include you. His words resonated with a truth Sophia had never experienced before. Neither her former fiancé nor Blackwater had ever considered her happiness separate from their own desires. I don't understand you, Preston Elwood, she whispered. 4 days ago, I was a stranger. Some people just fit together, he said, echoing Samuel's words from the previous evening. From the moment I saw you leaving town barefoot, I knew you were someone special, someone worth walking alongside, whether for a day or a lifetime. A tear slipped down Sophia's cheek. Preston reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed it gently from her skin. Come back to the ranch, he said softly. Not because you have nowhere else to go, but because maybe it's where you belong. In that moment, standing on the dusty trail with the sunrise painting the sky behind them, Sophia made her choice. She reached for Preston's hand, twining her fingers with his. I'll stay, she said. Not forever, just for now, to see what might grow between us. The smile that transformed Preston's face was like dawn breaking after the longest night. Without words, he helped her onto his horse, then mounted behind her. His arms encircled her waist as they turned back toward the ranch, toward a future neither had anticipated but both now welcomed. Samuel was waiting on the porch when they returned, Ranger dancing excitedly beside him. The older man's face split into a broad grin at the sight of them riding double. Decided to postpone your trip, he called as they dismounted. Sophia smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. It seems I have reasons to stay a while longer. Glad to hear it, Samuel nodded approvingly. Ranch needs a woman's touch. Preston's hand found Sophia's, squeezing gently, and perhaps a woman needs a ranch. Over the weeks that followed, Sophia found herself settling into life at the Elwood Samuel Ranch with surprising ease. Preston cleared space in the house's small study for her to set up a proper classroom, and soon she was teaching the children from neighboring ranches 3 days a week. The income, modest though it was, gave her the independence she valued while allowing her to use the skills she had trained for. The relationship between her and Preston developed slowly, naturally. They shared meals and conversations, worked side by side during busy days, and gradually learned each other's stories. Preston spoke of his war experiences, the horrors he had witnessed, and the brotherhood that had sustained him. Sophia revealed more about her disastrous engagement in Chicago to the headmaster's son, who had revealed himself to be controlling and cruel once the engagement was announced. He wanted a decorative wife who would never challenge or outshine him, she explained one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. When I disagreed with him publicly about education for immigrant children, he became enraged, said I had humiliated him. Preston's jaw tightened. Some men mistake control for strength. When I broke the engagement, he destroyed my reputation. Sophia's voice held old pain, claimed I had been improper with him. No respectable school would hire me after that. So you came west, Preston concluded, understanding now why she had been so wary of men's attention. So I came west, she echoed, only to find another man who thought ownership came with employment. Preston reached for her hand, his touch gentle. Not all men are like that, Sophia. She smiled, squeezing his fingers. I'm beginning to believe that. By midsummer, the careful friendship between them had blossomed into something deeper. Their first kiss came naturally on a warm July evening after a successful cattle drive. The ranch hands had departed after a celebratory dinner, leaving Preston, Sophia, and Samuel sitting around a small bonfire beneath the stars. When Samuel excused himself to retire, Preston walked Sophia back to the main house. At her door, she turned to bid him good night and found him looking at her with such tenderness that words failed her. Sophia, he said softly, may I kiss you? The simple request, so respectful of her boundaries, touched her deeply. She nodded, her heart racing as Preston leaned forward, his lips meeting hers in a gentle, reverent kiss that promised everything and demanded nothing. When they parted, Sophia felt as though something fundamental had shifted within her, fear giving way to hope, wariness to trust. Good night, Preston, she whispered. His smile was radiant in the lamplight. Good night, Sophia. August brought the county fair where Preston's prize bull won first honors and Sophia's apple pie took second place in the baking competition. They danced together under lantern light, laughed with neighbors, and returned to the ranch as a couple recognized and accepted by the community. In September, Preston began working on the small cabin again, adding a second room and improving the chimney. Sophia pretended not to notice, but her heart quickened every time she saw him heading there with lumber and tools. By October, as the aspens turned golden and the first frost silvered the mornings, Preston and Sophia had settled into a rhythm of shared life that felt both exciting and comfortable. On a particularly beautiful afternoon, he suggested a ride to the ridge overlooking the property, the same spot he had shown her on her third day at the ranch. The autumn landscape spread before them in a tapestry of russet, gold, and green. Cattle dotted the lower pastures, fat and content after a summer of good grazing. Smoke rose lazily from the chimney of Samuel's cabin, and birds wheeled overhead in the clear blue sky. It's even more beautiful than when you first showed me, Sophia observed. Dismounting to stand at the ridge's edge, Preston joined her, taking her hand in his. Everything looks different when you're not planning to leave it behind. She smiled, acknowledging the truth in his words. I'm glad I stayed. So am I. His voice held a note of nervousness she wasn't accustomed to hearing. Sophia, there's something I want to ask you. Her heart began to pound as Preston turned to face her fully. These past months have been the happiest of my life, he said, his gray eyes earnest. I know we agreed to take things slowly, to see what might grow between us. I believe something wonderful has grown, something I want to nurture for the rest of my days. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. Opening it, he revealed a delicate gold ring set with a modest pearl surrounded by tiny sapphires. It was my mother's, he explained. She told me to give it to a woman with both fire and gentleness in her spirit. I found that woman in you. Dropping to one knee, Preston took Sophia's trembling hand. Sophia Grayson, I love you with all that I am. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Tears blurred Sophia's vision as emotions overwhelmed her: joy, love, and a sense of rightness that transcended all her former fears. In this man, she had found not just a protector or provider, but a true partner who valued her mind and spirit as much as her heart. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, Preston, I will marry you. His face illuminated with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to gather her in his arms. Their kiss sealed the promise between them, a promise born on a dusty road when a woman tried to leave town barefoot and a cowboy said, "Then I'll walk with you." They married on a crisp November day with Samuel standing as Preston's best man and Rebecca, returned from Denver for the occasion, as Sophia's attendant. The small church in Willow Springs overflowed with neighbors and friends who had watched their love story unfold over the passing seasons. After the ceremony, Preston surprised Sophia by driving the wagon not back to the main ranch house, but to the small cabin he had been renovating. "Welcome home, Mrs. Elwood," he said as he carried her across the threshold. Sophia gasped in delight. The cabin had been transformed into a cozy home, complete with curtains Rebecca had sewn, bookshelves filled with volumes from the main house, and a beautiful handmade quilt on the bed. A fire crackled in the improved stone fireplace, and fresh flowers brightened the table despite the late season. "It's perfect," she breathed, turning to embrace her husband. "Absolutely perfect." Later, as they lay together in the quiet intimacy of their marriage bed, Sophia traced the contours of Preston's face in the firelight. "Did you ever imagine when you saw me leaving town barefoot that we would end up here?" she asked softly. Preston caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I knew only that I couldn't let you walk into the wilderness alone." Everything else, he smiled, drawing her closer, was a blessing I hadn't dared hope for. "I'm glad you walked with me," Sophia whispered against his lips. "I'll walk with you always," Preston promised, "wherever life leads us." And in the years that followed through the birth of their children, the expansion of the ranch, the passing of dear Samuel, and the inevitable challenges of frontier life, Preston kept that promise. Together, they walked through joy and sorrow, prosperity and hardship, always side by side, hand in hand. Their love a testament to the journey that began when a desperate woman tried to leave town barefoot, and a kind-hearted cowboy refused to let her walk alone.